You are listening to the Two Writers Walk Into a Bar podcast. In every episode, our goal is to help, inspire, and celebrate authors' journey to publication by reading and critiquing query letters, then tackle a writing topic we hope you find helpful. Okay, welcome back to our third episode of Two Writers Walk Into a Bar. I'm Angela.
I'm Ken.
And today we have a pretty fun topic we're going to tackle today. But first, I just want to touch base with you, Ken. How was your week?
Long, hot, tiring. But yeah. And yours?
Yes. Same. Work was insane. We had our inventory. I got in at 6:30 this morning. I slept for a little bit. And I got up and tried to look a little bit decent for this. But now having a beer, I'm drinking alone tonight. So I just want to share. My kids bought me this.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Simpsons. Studios and bought me this Duff beer stein. So I'm having a beer, I'm drinking alone. That's okay. Ken has to work tomorrow. We're recording this on Tuesday. Normally we do Mondays, but I had no internet yesterday. So
that's always fun.
Yeah, it didn't turn on until 1:00 this morning. So we had no internet. I know it really sucked, but
that's terrible.
And then I had to work all night. I am tired. I'm exhausted, but I have like 4 days of vacation coming up in July. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, looking forward to the 4th of July. And I told my husband, like, my birthday is like 2 days later. Right? I'm like, I just want to like drink and like listen to my records. Like, I don't want to do anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
And the 4th of July, I just want to barbecue hot dogs.
Yeah, my week was so brutal. I didn't write, critique, edit. I didn't do shit these last 2 days.
Same.
I'm just like a zombie. So
yeah. So what changed? Just more work or just
the temperature?
Is it hot?
Yeah, I work outside and it was in the high 80s here in Utah, and so, yeah, the temperature just saps it out of you when you're in it for a lot of the day,
I bet.
Just, I don't know, not sleeping well either on top. So hopefully we'll correct it this week and get back on track.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You know what? Honestly, I know this is so nerdy, but I started taking magnesium glycinate, my husband and I, and we sleep so much better. You don't get that, you don't have that druggy feeling. You just like relax and you just sleep. But I don't know, something to think about.
And on top of it, I had sciatica that last week. Like my back, I slept funky and tweaked it. So I was kind of bent over. So to add on top of all of it, that was just a combo.
Oh, man,
but my back's better. Yeah, my back's better. So hopefully I'll get a good night's sleep tonight and feel good. We'll get back on track. It'll be sweet.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. I didn't do any writing or editing either. I'm sad to say. But same as you, I had a super stressful time at week. We had inventory, and I have like a manager that I don't think he likes me. I don't think he likes me, and it's just a very weird thing. But getting ready for that was just so stressful. And then I applied for a different position within the company, a little better position. And so it was like no one had approached me about it. And I had to like do the whole like, hey, did you get my resume?
Jeez.
What'd
you hear? Like anything?
So I ended up, and it was just like, oh yeah, by the way, you'll be moving to the next position next week. I was like, oh, okay. And, cool. Gave me a little bit of a raise, which is, not bad. But yeah, I was just like, I was kind of just waiting, I was like, what's going on here? It's been like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Is this new one going to give you a little more chill time? You know what I mean? A little more writing time? Or is it going to be a better work environment?
No, it's just a little bit more money. It's actually going to be a little bit more my workload. But like I told you guys before, my schedule is I work all week. I mean, every day, well, not every day, but 5 days, whatever, right? So, but I am off like Monday. I close Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm off on Thursday. So those are my big writing days.
Oh, okay.
So, when I do and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I don't really do any writing. But this week was just crazy, and I was just tired. And today, getting home at 6:30
Maybe it's something in the universe. We both have a kind of a shitty week.
Maybe, I don't know. I know next week will be better, but then we got the 4th of July, so I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
I know I'll be busy with that, but anyway, so
I had all these big plans on my days off to rewrite Calidus Prin, the Spider Marsh Hall, which is a fantasy
yes.
detective. Yeah. It was a finalist in Allegory Ezine and got honorable mentions and stuff. So like the story was good, but it was before I really had introspection in any of my work. So I'm
It's
like,
so
the
good. I
story's
love it.
really cool.
It
Yeah, I
is.
really like it too.
It is such
Imagine
a good one.
if I put introspection in it, maybe I have a shot,
Yeah, you never
getting it
know. I mean,
published.
you got good bones. Got some good
Yeah,
bones in that story, I
for
think. It's
sure.
really
And
cool.
and I did nothing on it, so
Yeah. Well, you know what? Sometimes we just have to take those. Sometimes we have that as writers, might be a week where we just don't do anything. Life gets in the
yeah.
way or whatever. Or what, just shit happens.
Yeah, you got to refill that well, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Sometimes, so.
Yeah, I know. So I did, however, get a couple new critique partners. Kind of wanted to talk about, since we both are each other's critique partners, and we have other
Yeah.
critique partners. I know I had told you for a while you were my critique partner, only critique partner, but I did take on a couple more. But
Nice.
we have said before on the podcast that we met on critiquematch.com, which I think is a great site. So if you're a writer out there and you need a critique partner, check it out. It's a pretty great site. But beware, because sometimes you run into people that just, I want to quote Brandon Sanderson. Remember we took we both did his 2020 classes on YouTube.
Yeah.
Well, you had told me about it, right? Undertaking it, but he had this incredible quote that I was just like, "Oh my God, yes!" Like this, like the light bulb went on, And one of the things he said is when you're a critique partner for someone, he said was to oh my gosh, to describe, not prescribe. So basically, like he was like saying, if you could tell your critique partner like this part was boring to me, that's great because that's an emotion. But don't say things like, you know what you should really do? You should do this.
Yeah.
And so I've done that. I know I'm guilty of it in the past because we think as critique partners we're supposed to give like our opinions on someone's story, but it
Yeah.
is someone else's story.
Yeah.
So I just recently I had this girl. She's like, oh, don't do the bad dad trope. She's like, I don't like it. It's boring. I was like, okay.
That's too bad. Yeah. I don't give two shits what you think.
I was just like, okay, maybe you and I are not good. Maybe we're not good partner material. And she ended up dropping me like the next day, and I was just like, that's fine, like whatever.
Yeah. I've had a lot of those people. Like, I'm working on maybe a future project, the Mindy Darling.
Yes.
I'm not going to go too far into it. Yes. But I had a partner saying like, you can't write this book because I can't listen to this voice for a whole book or something like that.
Okay,
And I'm like,
great.
okay,
Great. So
good.
it's not for you.
I'm like, good. F off. Like, see ya.
Yeah. So I mean, I will say like, I mean, being a critique partner, I mean, it's hard, first of all, to have to send your work out to another person to read it. And I will say that in the beginning, I wasn't as thick skinned yet, and I would get kind of hurt and just be like, well, why is that bad? But then I learned that you have to filter. You kind of have to filter people's critiques. So like that one girl, she didn't like that trope, which was fine. But then she gave like other good things that I was like, I had to like, filter and take the good that she gave me and then throw out the bad. But
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yes. So I know you gave that example. Do you have another example of someone that you were just like, wow, that's,
Yeah, I have tons of them.
Yeah.
Like I had one, I think it was a girl said that, and she had an agent on her page. I don't know if she did or not, but she basically told me that I probably shouldn't be writing.
What? Oh my
it was
God.
one of my. It was my very first book that I wrote, 441 South, the one that the very first one that you worked on with
Yeah.
me,
Okay.
it was an early draft, and she said you should probably choose another profession or probably not, continue
Writing's
this.
not for you or whatever.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And
Wow,
so
that is wild. That is
I
crazy.
I wish I remembered her name. I don't, and I probably wouldn't throw it out here anyway, but yeah, I just
So how did you
unmatched with her.
unpack that though? Like, did that hurt, or were you just like, I don't know, fuck you?
I was just like F you, because that's just how it is.
Mhm.
I have a really thick skin, like shit doesn't bother me.
Yeah, that's good because I didn't at first, and I mean, there were times where I would just be like, "Oh my god, I had such a bad critique." Like, "Oh my god, I'm a shit writer."
Yeah. Well, we all think we're shit writers from now. I mean,
Well,
everybody.
yeah, well, yeah, but I will say in the beginning, especially when I went on critiquematch.com, some of
Yeah.
those, right? I mean, just be prepared though, too. Like, guys, some of those writers, I mean, writers are competitive, right? I guess it's kind of like in any field or whatever, work field, whatever.
Some
But
are. Some aren't for
yeah,
sure.
but there's a lot of a competition there, and there's a lot of, oh, I'm better, or whatever. And so just be aware too that when you do look for a critique partner, you will run into those people, but just keep moving, forward. The good thing about critiquematch.com is you could just get rid of somebody. Like I've gotten rid of a couple of critique partners. It just didn't gel, didn't work with me. I had one had one critique partner that was just like, I don't read a lot of fantasy, so I don't get this. I don't understand, like, why is this happening, or why is this, and why. And I was like, oh my god. I was like, what was I don't know why she picked me as a critique partner. I didn't even reach out to her, and I
Yeah.
clearly say in my profile, like, you have to be like a fantasy reader,
Yeah.
because if you don't read fantasy and you don't understand the tropes and like the how the story moves along, then you are just gonna be like, this is really weird.
Yeah, if you don't like fantasy, you're gonna hate fantasy. It's just, like,
Yeah,
it's
because
just
I
people like what they like, and
exactly.
yeah, so, like, if that's not your alley, you probably shouldn't be a partner for the person that does fantasy. It's pretty simple sometimes, but
Yeah, you'd be surprised, but I mean, I have a really good another critique partner. She's really cool. She's actually going to be sending me her query letter later. Say that
nice.
3 times.
Yes.
I've been helping her out. We've been working together now for about a year, I think. But she kind of like we kind of took a break for a bit, and we
Yeah.
just started like reconnected. So her story is really cool. Her story is a fantasy story. But anyway, so yeah, one thing that I try to do as a critique partner, I always try to look at. I mean, of course, there's like the general like it does a sentence flow well. Like I know Ken, sometimes we're like, delete this word, like you don't need it. It reads better without this word. A lot of the
Yeah.
filler words that what is I'm trying to think of another filler word. I know we use that a lot. I'm always like, delete it.
As as
Has, yes.
like, sentences are a lot more punchy if you take the as, put a comma, you
Yeah,
know?
like has started or started walking. Just say
Like
walking.
like yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, he climbed through the window, and then you'd put as he climbed up the ivy, instead of be like, he climbed up the window, up the spiraling ivy, it just
Right.
there's more of a flow there
Yes. Yes.
instead of those filler words for sure.
So yeah, filler words. That's what they are. I do look
Yeah,
for filler words
there's filler
sometimes.
and filter. Yeah.
Yeah, and echoes. Echoes is a
Yes.
big one, and I didn't even. I remember when I first started writing, I didn't realize echo words. Like I didn't know that you couldn't use the same word so close together until one of my first critique partner, I think, pointed it out. That was like, you already used this word in that sentence, and I was like, so. But then
Yeah.
I started looking into it. And I was like, oh, duh.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
But yeah, so I try to look at filler words. I look at echoes as like some sentence structure. But for me, because I am a plotter, and we talked about this on the last episode, I do look at each chapter and I try to look at, is there any character development here? Is the character arc moving along? Is something new happening to propel the plot? And so I'm always thinking about that when I critique chapters for other critique partners. And I know we've done this to each other. We've done that. I know there was a chapter, I think, of my last book, and you were like, literally nothing happened in this book. I mean, this chapter, and I went back and read it, and I was, damn it, he's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, all I discovered was this, and he's like, you don't need it.
Yeah, that happens time to time. You write those out and you don't see it while you're writing it. You're like, oh, that's cool. This would be neat, and then you go back, you're like, that did nothing for my
did
plot.
nothing for the story. Exactly. Yeah. So that's how I critique. I always look at the structure, and even if you're not, and we talked about this before, even if you're not a plotter, you still have those structures. Because like, I think you and I had talked about this reading. I think you made a good point about how you learn how to write through reading, like osmosis almost. Yes. Like you're just absorbing how to write a story, even if you don't plot out like the beats like what I do. You understand what is needed for a story. You understand that, you have to like drive that plot. There needs to be a character arc, so, but just because I'm a plotter, that's just how I approach my critique.
Yeah.
So I always try to think like, okay, what is this chapter doing? Not only am I reading for entertainment, because especially your story that you're writing right now is so incredible. I love it. I can't wait to like get to the end of it to see what happens, But at the same time, then I'm like, I have to put my critique hat on and be like, okay, so what do we need? What do we need in this chapter? What did we learn? Is it doing all the heavy lifting and doing all the things it's supposed to do?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like how I approach critiquing stuff for fellow partners. So what is your approach? How do you?
Well, I obviously do the overarching plot stuff, characters, if I like them or not, the direction of it's going, obviously, if you're hitting beats and all that, and if it matters. But then I like to break it down by the writing itself.
Yes.
Because to nail a proper, a sentence flow, you need like the 5 things. You need good dialogue. You need and you have to have them in the right proportions too. If you have a bunch of one and not, like, if you go on for 3 paragraphs describing how a mansion looks, people are going to be like, get over it already. Jesus, I don't give a shit about this mansion, But if you only have a sentence that says there's a mansion, people are going to be like, hey, what the fuck does it look like? You know what I mean? Like, so it goes every which way.
Yeah,
There's a nice balance. You need balance. Yes. And so a lot of my critique comes down to, after I get through the plot stuff, after I read it like that, then I try to go through to find spots where it needs to expand. Like, I think I put myself in the other person's story. And if you're like, for example, you're like, there's a house, and then he went inside and there was a dog. Like, I'll be like, no, what does the house look like? What was the dog doing? What does he look like? What's his temperament? Is he growling? Like, I need all that.
I just want to say really quickly that I do this to Ken all the time. And constantly he's like, wait. He's like, what does it look like? What does this look like? He's always telling me that. I so appreciate that. And it's just so funny to me because I'm like, shit. I'm like, that's the type of writer I am.
Yeah. And that's okay, but that's that. And same with introspection. Sometimes you need deeper thoughts on something, you know what I mean? To further the plot and the character development, you need that.
Yes. I remember
you need to go deeper. Yeah.
Yes. And I will say that when Ken and I first started as critique partners, neither one of us, I think, had that interiority down.
Hey, writer friends. Querying is hard, and putting together a query letter is even harder. We want to help, so send us your query letter and first 3 pages to 2writersinabar@gmail.com, and we'll query on air. And don't forget to tell us where we can find you on social media so we can share it with all our listeners. We want to help, inspire, and celebrate with you on your writing journey.
I think I would try to help. It was so funny because it was easier for me to see it in other people's work, but I couldn't see it in my own. Right, like I would read like your chapters and like other partners' chapters and be like, but what does your character think about this? Like, what's happening in his mind right now? He just found out something really amazing, and I want to know his thoughts. So I know in the beginning when we first started working together, I think that was probably like our weakness. What would you call that? A weak spot, blind spot, maybe?
A void. Yeah. Yeah, because like I had no introspection at all. I mean, I might have had a few italicized thoughts, maybe.
Yeah.
A little bit, but not enough. Like you, at least at the bare minimum, you need at least 20% of your entire book to be introspection.
Yes.
And you would be shocked how many writers do not have that.
Yeah, I was one of them in the beginning.
I was too, and I've had probably over 100 critique partners, I would say.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I go through a lot. I'm trying to find the right ones that work for me, And
to make a team, to build a team, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So I tried, I was like Pokemon, gotta catch them all. You know what I mean?
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I can't. I was about to confess something right now. I almost passed you up on Critique Match.
Did you?
Because,
shit.
Well, not only because I was thinking that I wanted a female critique partner, because I was like, well, I don't know if a man's gonna like, get this or whatever. A little bit of, so sorry. But then the book that I was writing, I had my main character was a man. So I was like, I remember like hovering over your name, and I was like, well, wait a minute. I'm like, actually, he might help me with like that introspective of like a man's point of view, obviously, and I'm not a man, but it's just like, So then I was like, click, accept, okay.
And you probably got the chapter 20 seconds later.
I did. It was pretty quick. I remember, but I was excited. I just remember just being really excited because I was like, "Oh, cool. Okay, let's do this. I'm ready for this."
Hell
yeah. I know, and I've mentioned in the past before. Like, I had no idea what a critique partner was, and actually was luckily enough to have an agent that declined one of my manuscripts and was like, I always encourage my writers to get critique partners. I'm like, what's that?
Yeah, exactly. I had no idea either, but then I believe I watched that Brandon Sanderson, where he taught his whole creative writing course.
Yeah, you're the one that told me about it. I was so excited.
Yeah, and then he mentioned critique partners, I believe, and that's when I got. I'm like, free critique partners, just Googled it up.
Oh, I see. So you did that in 2020, 21, whatever it was.
2020. Yeah.
No, you were on Critique Match since 2020 because we met in 21, right?
Yeah, I think I was there in 2020.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. Right on. Yeah. But I really love that quote about him saying to just describe and not prescribe. And I do take that. I always think about that when I do get a critique from someone else, and I'm always like, okay, this person's giving me a prescription to fix my work, and I don't really need that unless I kind of agree, then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I've been guilty of that. I know I've done that to you before, and I'm like, oh shit.
Maybe, but that's okay.
No, I definitely did. It's okay. I mean, I did, and I've learned, and I'm now just like, okay, I think the one thing I do try to say is if like, how can you make the character arc be, a little bit more like the focal point in this chapter. Like this might be a good place to really show that character arc.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So,
and I am really big when I critique. I also write like a whole novel within the critiques most of the time.
But do you just do that with me or with everybody else? Like, they do that with me, but I appreciate it.
Mostly just you, yeah.
Yeah.
I felt
so bad because you were like, yeah, I know it's going to take me a long time to finish this chapter, but, writing out those paragraphs takes a long time. Like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing.
No, don't take it like that. The other people don't need that. They're like, their stories, they're good at the story structure.
Yeah.
They're just stories boring. Some of my partners. Sorry, guys, if you're seeing this. I
Oh
apologize.
no.
So I just try to work with them with that, like to try to make it a little more exciting, But I'm down to working with only 3 people now, you included.
Oh, nice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the other people, I do it with. I have one other. I won't name him, but I do the same thing where I write paragraphs the way I do with you with him, and then another one where his writing is very polished, but the story's just kind of boring, and so I'm kind of working with him to try to zhuzh it up, I guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but
I
yeah,
mean,
it's
honestly,
not just you.
working. Yeah, well, that's good. You're like, but it gives us a lot of work, and now I know why it takes so long. So I apologize. But
Yeah.
like I said in the past, though, like once I give you those first few chapters, and I see how I can tell that the flaws in those first few chapters continue on through the rest of the manuscript, so that I know how to fix it. So hopefully, those later chapters get a little easier for you to
Oh,
critique.
they're
At
way
least I hope.
easier. Oh yeah, they're way easier.
I know the
So
first few
much
chapters
faster.
are hard. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the first like 1 through 5, cool, whatever, and then 6, 7, 8, rough, and then the rest after that, it's nice. It's like, a cool 15, 20 minutes to just quickly, you know. Whereas the 6, 7, 8 was like, 2
A
hour
lot of work for
affair.
you. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh, you're fine. It is what it is. It shows in the later chapters that it helped, so that's all that
Yes.
matters.
Yes, it does. And I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. I like doing it. I like helping each other to get better, and
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Because, like we always say, our end goal is to be traditionally published. So, to
Yes.
get that
100%.
agent. So,
Yes.
what would you say if you were working with, let's say you get a new critique partner and they just started writing, they just wrote their book, they're brand new, they just got this idea. What would your advice be for them? Like if they come to you and they're like, they want you to be a critique partner. I
Ooh,
mean,
well, first I have to look at the first sample chapter, right, and see if there's
mm-hmm,
any flaws in the
right.
makings. Um, Grammar's easy to fix. I don't have to really worry about that.
Yeah.
If there's a bunch of grammar, you can point that out a couple times, and they'll get the idea of blah blah blah. But it comes down to, do they have? Like I call it lasagna, the writing lasagna.
Mm-hmm,
You know,
yeah.
like introspection is the cheese, dialogue is the noodle, the tomato sauce is like action and description and whatever, whatever. And if they
Right.
have the right ingredients to make a nice lasagna, like a good portion of each of them, then I'm super impressed if that's their first novel, because that's really hard to do, and I've never seen it yet with any of the partners I've had that are new.
Yeah.
So usually I would start there. Yeah, I would start there. I almost all the time, unless they're a genius.
Yeah. Which I haven't discovered, I haven't figured that out either. I mean, I haven't reached anybody like that. But I will say that I think my advice, especially if you're listening to this podcast and you just wrote your first manuscript because you got this idea and you were excited and you came up with your characters and your world building and all of that. Obviously my first advice would be definitely get a critique partner, even if you don't want to be traditionally published. Like
Yeah.
even if you plan on going self-published, I would still get a critique partner. And of course, beta readers, right? Because if your story is boring and you send out to beta readers and they're like, this is boring, then you got to fix it, whatever. But then I would also just say to just filter through some of the critiques and don't take it too hard. You know what I mean? Because I made that mistake and I think that stalled my writing. And that's just my own personal thing. I shouldn't have done that. but I did, unfortunately I did. And so I kind of stalled my writing a bit because I was just like, maybe I should be a writer. Like maybe I don't have what it takes.
Yeah.
But then I just, my husband was like a good partner that was just like, no, like keep going, like keep learning, keep doing this and that. So I would say to any new writers out there, don't be discouraged because your craft your writing's gonna get better, right? With each, like I look back at the first book, I'm like, oh my god, that's so bad. Compared to where I'm at now, I'm writing, what is this, my fourth, fifth book, something like that. I mean, I can see the difference, So I would say if you, and then take as many classes as you can on writing. Honestly, I learned so much taking classes. I didn't know about interiority. I didn't know about a deep POV. I didn't know about, even though I didn't know about the story structure, I did know about there were certain things that a story needed. I also didn't know that each chapter needs to drive the plot. Like I did not know that when I first started writing. And I had a lot of chapters that did absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, I mean, there was so many that I was like, oh my God, what is this? Like, I had like really cool like scenes with characters, but as far as moving the plot forward, nothing was happening. And I didn't know that when I first started writing. I didn't realize that each chapter needs to drive the plot, and it's a lot of work, but you can do it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and don't give up. Keep going. That's all.
Yes.
Like
and then
you have to have a thick skin. Don't give a shit what anybody says. If you want to do this, you're gonna have to learn to shed off some shit that's gonna come your way. It's just part of the game, I
so
guess.
true. If you want to do this, this is something that's so deep inside you. Like both Ken and I have talked about this in the past. Like this is something that's just so a passion within us that we're just like, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
We're working towards that goal. And then of course come listen to us on our podcast because we'll try to help and we're here to celebrate with you guys. So I'm looking forward to being able to critique some query letters from our listeners and then hearing being able to celebrate afterwards. Like I'm really looking forward to that. So
for sure.
Yeah.
And one more tip I wanted to throw in too, if you're a little uncomfortable with getting a critique partner, you can always do it anonymously. You can put a fake name in there. Nobody has to know it's you. You know what I mean? You can just, you can go up there and put your name as anonymous, and there you go.
Yeah.
No one will ever know it was you.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I've had a few requests from critique partners on Critique Match where there wasn't even a picture. I didn't know that, but they had a little small bio of I'm writing my first book and just kind of looking for some guidance or whatever. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so don't let that get in your way. And anonymity is good. It can happen, so you can send out your work carefree a little bit
until you're like comfortable enough. Yeah, and then when you get comfortable, for sure. So what are you reading right now? Are you still reading?
I finished that. I'm now reading Red Country by Joe Abercrombie. But I'm technically listening to an audiobook.
Oh, okay. Well, that's still reading.
Yeah.
Right? I know there's a lot of debate about it.
Easier at work. It's easier at work, because then I can keep doing my thing while I listen to it. So
yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's good. I mean, you're lucky you can do that work. I can't listen or read anything at work. It's crazy, but I'm still making my way through Silver Nitrate by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, and I don't know why. I think I'm just, like I said before, I'm just too tired, but I am working through that.
The audiobook's down.
Well, I will say too, so I may not be reading, but I am watching. I'm watching some TV. So right now I'm watching, I think, The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix.
Oh, cool.
It's like a 10 episode series. I hadn't watched it yet, but I've really been into horror lately. And so I've been wanting to, I was thinking, I know we talked about this, like maybe tapping into the horror genre. I'd kind of really like to write. a horror book. I had this idea. And so I'm watching this series right now. And by watching, I'm taking note of like how, because I kind of look at each episode as a chapter, right? Like a chapter in a book. So there's a lot of intrigue, a lot of mystery. They really are like, they're just like pulling you through each episode because you're like, you learn something new that you didn't learn the last episode. And then you're like hitting that next episode to watch it because you're like, oh my God, I gotta know. I gotta know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I was thinking about that. And it's the same thing. It's the same for writing. I mean, storytelling is pretty much the same. I took a class where this agent was like, as writers, she was like, do you know who your competition is? And it's Netflix, it's Hulu, it's, all those TV and movies because, people have a choice to either watch it, read, or listen, right?
Yeah.
And so the way that they do TV shows and movies, it's the same. It's all the same storytelling. And one thing I noticed while watching The Haunting of Hill, have you watched it?
I haven't, no.
You haven't? Oh, it's so good. It's really, really good.
I've heard it's good.
Yeah, it's really good. And they kind of go back in the past and then they go to the present. And it's kind of like that, right? But every time you go back, you learn something new. You learn something that you're like, oh my God, right? And it's the same thing when you're writing your book. Your reader should be learning something new about your character so that you're sort of like pulling them along so that they want to go to that next chapter or like in this case the next episode. And so I've been thinking about that a lot. And then I know in my current manuscript I do have a little bit of intrigue and where we learn stuff, as we go along about my character. But I just thought that was interesting. And when I noticed about well, all stories, but mainly horror stories, is you always have that heart, the heart of like that, the character, like you have to feel something for these characters. Like they're going through this like horrible shit. Even like the villain that's just like, you can't stand this person, this character. But then you learn something new about them that changes your perspective, right? And it's that heart, something bad that happened or something where they were hurt in this way that's so relatable that you're like, oh my God, you're like, yes, like maybe that happened to me in the past, but obviously we don't turn into a villain. We hope, but
hopefully. But yeah, characters is where it's at. I mean, if you can nail the character and give them a great arc, it's so amazing.
Oh
like,
my God,
that's what draws people in.
That's exactly what I was thinking because I was like, when I was watching this, I was like, not only is it terrifying, I mean, there's some terrifying scenes in there where I'm just like, but with that horror, there's also this beautiful heart of the story that's there in all of these characters. So it's like that's one thing I love about this series. And I think the Haunting of Bly Manor was the same. By the end of the movie, it turned into this like beautiful love story, even though you had all this like scary like stuff happening, the hauntings and the ghosts and all of this. It's kind of like the ghosts are like the subplot, but the main plot is what the characters are going through that you're falling for, that you're just like, oh my God, you're drawn into by the character.
So if your readers don't give a shit about the characters, they don't give a shit about anything else that happens. You might be able to wow them with a jump scare or, oh, that's a cool effect. But if you don't give a shit about the characters, that's the number one thing. You got to make characters that people like. You got to give them arcs. Not all characters have arcs. Some stay the same or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you got to have people want to see growth or the opposite. They want to see your character start here and just nosedive down to hell.
So what's your favorite character arc?
Oh God. Obviously the best one is start the bottom to the top. That one's just fun. You start out as a lowly something. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. So I like the villain. I like when they start off as the villain, but then like I guess you could say like the Darth Vader.
Okay,
and then
I love that too.
Yes. And then they show their heart at the end. You're like, I knew they weren't really evil.
Yeah. I like it when they're like lowly and then by the end they're powerful and or they've done something cool. That's always fun. I mean, it's boring. It's like the main damn trope of all time, but
I don't think it's boring. No, I don't think it's boring.
I love it. I enjoy it.
Yeah. I love me a good villain turn good, but I also like the opposite too. Although it's a little harder for me, but when they're good and they turn evil, it's always such a fun ride. Because it's like usually, and I would say probably like the new book that you're starting to write has that feel to it. That I really enjoy that. Not gonna say anything, you know what I'm talking about. But I do love that too, where they start off really good and then, something happens and they just turn and you're like, oh shit.
If you love characters, Joe Abercrombie is the best fantasy character writer of all time.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. All right. Good to know. Yeah.
If you like dark and gritty, there's no spoilers, but basically, if you want to end up rooting for the most vile human beings on the planet, you need to read Joe Abercrombie.
Oh, really?
The greatest.
All right.
He makes you love the most vile people, like pompous asses, evil executioners, and you're pulling for them. You're like, I love these people, and they're like cutting people's hands off, and like.
So that I love that because I love when a storyteller can just turn the audience on the villain side. Like I don't know, I just love that.
Oh yeah, they're all villains. Like it. Yeah. I swear to God, his characters are the best I've ever read in my entire life. Any genre, anything.
I'm gonna have to check it out. Well, I don't know. I love that I mean, and the only reason why I bring this up is because I haven't been able to get any physical reading in or listening to an Audible, but watching TV is also another avenue for you to learn storytelling. So
it is. Yeah.
Don't feel bad if you're listening and you're like, oh, I haven't read a book in a minute. And if you're watching a lot of TV shows, just you as a writer, you're going to catch on to a lot of that story structure. Yeah. But I love being able to just see that character development, and I don't know if I never noticed it before about horror. I mean, I've read, but I don't know if it's because I'm just now thinking of maybe possibly writing in that genre. I realize that it's not so much the horror as much as it's about the characters and what they're going through. And that's really why you're reading. And that horror stuff is just kind of like what gets you there. That really
some people like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm, but what keeps you staying, no worries. But what keeps you is the character. So,
yeah.
So well, I'm gonna try to get some reading in this week. I'm gonna try really hard, but I will say that the week of 4th of July, probably. I'm gonna try though. I'm gonna try.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try, but I'm gonna be busy.
Yes. Yeah, I try to read 2 pages in the morning. Like
that's
it before I go to work.
Oh my God, that's a great goal. Shit, I need to do that. That's a great goal.
Yeah, that's it. I start at the top of one page, get the next page, bookmark, and then I gotta go.
That's perfect. I love that. No, it's perfect. I didn't even think of that. I could definitely. I mean, I could do that. Okay, I could do that.
Yeah, it's not fast. It's not great, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Hey, whatever. So, you're getting it in. That's all that matters. But anyway, guys, so that's all we have for today. If you're looking for critique partners, we recommend critiquematch.com. I know there's some other websites out there, but Critique Match is where it's at. And no, we don't get paid to say this. That's just our
not a sponsor.
Not yet. No, just kidding. Just kidding. But also to again, send us in your query letters if you want us to take a look at it. We don't mind helping. Like we've always said, we're always here to help, inspire, and celebrate with you guys. And hopefully, one day we'll be celebrating our own victories. I know it's going to happen. Don't know when, but I know it's going to happen. And so we want to build a positive writing community with you guys. So we hope that this episode you got some good information out there. If you have any questions for either of us, feel free to hit us up on our Twitter and our Instagram. And of course, you can always watch our episodes on YouTube on Thursdays. So that's it. And we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. Do you want to sign us off?
All right, we're out. See y'all later.
Bye.
And that's it for today's episode, friends. We hope you learned something new today. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube under Two Writers Walk Into a Bar podcast. Our YouTube episodes will upload on Thursdays, the day after the show airs, if you want to watch. And if you want your query letter and the first 3 pages critiqued and read on air by us, send them to our email at twowritersinAbar@gmail.com. Put query on air in the subject line. We will read them on a first come, first served basis. Remember, we are here to help, inspire, and celebrate. Two Writers Walk Into a Bar podcast is produced by the Brava Media Group.